Hello, friends and family in Facebook land. I wanted to make a video in honor of my son's 18th birthday. I decided that the best gift that I could give him was telling our story. You see, if I had that pregnancy now, he wouldn't be here. And I probably wouldn't either, which means my daughter wouldn't either. And so since he's turning 18 and he's going to get to vote in this upcoming election for the first time, what better way to honor him than to tell our story, his story. So when I was 14 weeks pregnant, I had to go to my OBGYN for a blinding pain in my right side. They poked around, they did an ultrasound, but they didn't know what was wrong. They couldn't figure it out. And my OBGYN, it was the on-call OBGYN, wasn't mine, but I loved her. She was not tactless, but very forthcoming and funny, and always said exactly what she meant. And she breezed into the room while I was curled up in the fetal position on the ultrasound table, and she said, "The only way we're gonna see what is wrong is to cut you open." And in my position, I was facing the wall, so I turned my head and I looked at her and I said, "Do it." And she shook her head and she walked over to me. She pulled up her stool in front of me so that she was face to face with me, and she said, "Wait, you need to understand that I'm going to be cutting you open right where he is, and it's very possible that he will not make it." And before I could say anything, my mother, who was across the room, said, "You do what you have to do to save my baby." And of course, my husband concurred, and I said, "It's okay, do it. I'm at peace." And if you want to read more about that whole experience, I wrote 2 blog posts that will explain all the peace that surrounded me at that time, and I knew that it was the right decision to make. So the OBGYN said okay, and in an hour later, less than an hour later, I was being wheeled into the operating room where they put me under and cut me open. After the surgery, when I was waking up and it was just me in the room, my OBGYN came in again, breezed into the room, lots of energy, stood next to my bed. I could still barely talk because they had just taken the tube out. So I just listened, and she explained to me what happened. Without going into all the details, they had to remove the whole right side, all my reproductive organs on the right side, because I had a softball size cyst that had wrapped itself around all of my reproductive organs, had twisted them around 2 times, she said. And she said I could not believe that they had not burst yet. And I said, okay. And the baby was okay. They heard the heartbeat. The baby made it, obviously. And again, she said, "Wait, you need to understand what happened. And you need to understand that having the surgery when you did saved his life and yours." She said, in the next week, maybe 2, at the most 2 weeks, she said, I would estimate that you had less than 2 weeks left. It would have burst. It would have wrapped itself around again. Everything would have burst, the cyst, ovaries, tubes. It would have killed the baby instantly. And unless you could have gotten into surgery immediately, you would have died too. I was, of course, still in a little woozy state. I was ecstatic that I was okay, that my baby was okay. And I said, okay, good to know. And all of that didn't really process until years later, when I hear stories of women being turned away for emergency care. And especially after Roe was overturned, and our legislators in North Carolina, without asking voters, changed our law from 20 weeks to 12 weeks. I started hearing more stories and more stories. And I realized what my OBGYN meant. When she first breezed into that room and she told me the only way we can tell what's happening is to cut you open. Pro-choice gave her the right to say that. She would not be able to say that now. If you read the thousands of stories coming out from women who are being turned away, you'll see that they're not being given the choice. She would have had to come in the room and she would have had to have said to me, we aren't able to figure out exactly what's wrong, so we're going to have to run some more tests. We're going to have to do x-rays, ultrasounds, blood tests. We're going to have to figure out exactly what is wrong with you to see if your life is in danger. Because she did not know that it was. And without my life being in danger, without being able to prove it on paper and in court, she never would have done that surgery. I promise. She would not have done it. And as she said, having the surgery when I did saved his life. So if she had had to have waited, if she would have had to run more tests and had to have proven and gotten approval from the hospital board, like some states have to do, or have to get approval from a panel of doctors, which other states have to do, if she would have had to submit arguments, as some states require, that my life was in danger, it would have taken weeks. And it still could have been shut down because they didn't know. Was my life in danger? Yes, it was. And so was my baby's. And having that surgery saved both of us. And ultimately my daughter as well. So I'm telling this story because people need to know. People need to know that these abortion bans are not about abortion. They're not stopping abortions. They're not even lowering the abortion rate. It's increased. It increased more last year than it ever has in the history of our country. That's including the year it became legal. But these bans are traumatizing women, and they're hurting women, and women who wanted their babies, women who are being told to bleed out at home, bleeding out in bathrooms, being sent away to the parking lot. And my son knows his story. He knows what could have happened to him. He knows he's lucky to have been born in a time where women had more rights. And he has been very adamant and open in telling me that he will be voting for women's rights this election. And for anyone who has a woman in their life of reproductive age, or a granddaughter or daughter who's going to be of reproductive age, that's what this election is about. Without these rights, we have nothing. I just want to share that story, and hopefully someone hears it that needs to hear it and understand exactly what is going on. Thanks. Happy birthday, buddy.